Rome, in the collective imagination, once seemed an eternal city, the heart of an empire that appeared unbreakable. For centuries, its dominion expanded with an inexorable force, growing larger and more sophisticated than any state that had come before it. The story of the fall begins not with weakness, but with the illusion of invincible strength. Yet, this colossal structure, built over hundreds of years, would not last forever. At its zenith, during the Pax Romana, the Roman Empire was a marvel of organization and scale. At its greatest extent, under Emperor Trajan in the early 2nd century AD, its borders covered a staggering expanse, from the cold frontiers of Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain, down to the fertile Nile Valley in Egypt, from the Atlantic coast of modern-day Portugal and Spain, to the plains of Mesopotamia in the east. The Mediterranean Sea, Mare Nostrum, was effectively a Roman lake. It facilitated trade, communication, and the movement of legions across its shores. This immense territory was held together by more than military might. A sophisticated infrastructure of administration and engineering formed the empire's backbone. The Romans constructed over 80,000 kilometers of paved roads. Those roads allowed for the swift deployment of troops. They enabled efficient collection of taxes, and they powered the vibrant flow of commerce: grain from Egypt, olive oil from Spain, wine from Gaul. Those goods supplied bustling cities across the empire. Ingenious aqueducts brought fresh water from distant sources. The unity of the empire was reinforced by law and language. Roman law provided a common legal framework. It shaped how people did business, inherited property, and resolved disputes across the empire. In the western provinces, Latin became the dominant language of government, commerce, and culture. That linguistic bond had a profound, lasting impact on the future of Europe. For the many diverse peoples under its rule, the empire represented order, stability, and strength. A world where the rule of law, at least in theory, prevailed over chaos. This period of unparalleled stability and prosperity, however, would not last. The very size and complexity of the empire created immense challenges for its rulers. Governing such a vast and diverse territory required enormous resources, a strong central authority, and a loyal, effective military. For a time, Rome managed to balance these elements, creating a world of relative peace and opportunity. But as the centuries wore on, the foundations began to show signs of strain, slowly giving way to the internal and external pressures that would ultimately lead to fragmentation and collapse in the West. The narrative of Rome's collapse is not merely an account of military defeats or political turmoil. It is a complex tapestry woven from threads of economic hardship, social transformation, and the relentless pressure of migrating peoples along its vast frontiers. One of the most significant and corrosive factors, a profound and prolonged period of political instability. The established system of imperial succession, never perfectly codified, began to break down catastrophically during the 3rd century AD. This era is called the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire descended into near constant civil war. A dizzying succession of leaders. Many were powerful army commanders vying for the throne. In one chaotic 50-year span, dozens were proclaimed emperor. Most met a violent end after a brief, precarious reign. The so-called barracks emperors rose on the strength of their legions. They were often overthrown by the very soldiers who'd elevated them. This cycle of usurpation and civil war devastated stability and the governance of the empire. Each claimant would march his army on Rome or another strategic center. They drained frontier garrisons, leaving frontiers vulnerable to attack. Imperial authority became dependent on military backing, not on established law, nor on the Senate's consent. Section 4. An economy in decline, the seeds of ruin. Alongside the political chaos, the Roman economy was beset by severe, deeply rooted problems. The immense cost of maintaining a massive standing army to defend thousands of miles of frontier. A sprawling civil bureaucracy. Lavish public works. All of this placed an enormous financial burden on the state. To meet these expenses, emperors raised taxes to crushing levels. The heavy tax burden fell on the agricultural sector and on the urban middle class. This drained wealth and initiative from the productive core. Many small farmers abandoned their land. Faced with a shrinking tax base and escalating costs, the government turned to currency debasement. Emperors minted coins with progressively less precious metal, like silver, but the same face value. People lost confidence, and inflation ran rampant. Prices for everyday goods soared. Long-distance trade became harder and slowed. The once vibrant commercial network began to contract. Economic decline widened the social divide. The majority struggled with heavy taxes, rising prices, and economic uncertainty. A small class of extremely wealthy landowners, the senatorial aristocracy, often thrived. They used political influence to evade taxes and bought up land from struggling smallholders, creating vast estates, latifundia. Those estates became self-sufficient and left the market. The tax pool shrank and social tension grew. Ultimately, these pressures created a vicious cycle of decline. Section 5. The Strained Shield. Military pressures and shifting loyalties. The Roman army, for centuries the most formidable fighting force in the world and the primary instrument of imperial power, underwent significant transformations that ultimately weakened its ability to defend the empire. The sheer length of the frontiers, stretching for thousands of miles along the Rhine-Danube rivers in Europe across the deserts of the East, required a massive and permanent military presence. It became increasingly difficult to recruit enough soldiers from Roman citizens. The citizen-farmer ideal had faded, replaced by the need for a large professional full-time military force. The state relied more on non-Roman peoples, recruiting from provincial fringes and from barbarian tribes outside the borders. Foederati, allied groups allowed to settle in return for military service. Skilled warriors, but loyal often to commanders or tribal leaders, not to the Roman state, or a distant emperor in Rome or Ravenna. This changed the army's composition and character. The recruitment shift created a dangerous dynamic. The military became barbarized in personnel and in tactics and command. Barbarian generals like Stilicho Ricimer rose to supreme power, often ruling behind puppet emperors. Section 6. The final incursions, the sacks of Rome and the end of an era. The growing weakness of the Western Roman Empire was laid bare in the 5th century through devastating incursions. A pivotal moment came in AD 410. Rome itself was attacked and sacked by the Visigoths under Alaric. For the first time in nearly 800 years, the Eternal City had fallen. Physical damage was significant, but the psychological impact was immeasurable. Shockwaves spread across the empire. The myth of Roman invincibility was shattered. St. Jerome in Bethlehem, the city which had taken the whole world, was itself taken. The 410 sack was a warning, not an isolated event. Central authority crumbled. Germanic groups crossed frontiers, carving kingdoms on Roman soil. Vandals swept through Gaul, swept through Spain, crossed the strait into North Africa, a key grain province. In AD 439, they captured Carthage, set up a powerful Vandal kingdom and a pirate fleet in the Mediterranean. Decades later, Rome was violated again. In AD 455, Vandals under Gaiseric sailed from Carthage and carried out a second systematic sack. For 2 weeks, they stripped Rome of its remaining treasures, public treasures, private treasures. The emperor's prestige and authority collapsed. He could not protect his capital. The West disintegrated into barbarian kingdoms. Rule shrank to Italy and its immediate surroundings. The final act came in AD 476, marking the end of the Western Empire. The emperor was a figurehead. Real power lay with barbarian commanders. Odoacer, commander of remaining Roman forces in Italy, deposed Romulus Augustulus. He sent the imperial insignia to Constantinople with a message that the West no longer needed its own emperor. A quiet, anticlimactic end of an era. Section 7. Echoes through eternity. The lasting legacy of Rome. Even as the political structure of the Western Roman Empire crumbled in AD 476, the immense cultural and institutional legacy of Rome did not disappear. Instead, its ideas, its innovations, its language became foundational elements for the civilizations that would rise in its place, echoing through the centuries to shape the modern world in countless ways. Perhaps its most enduring contribution is in the realm of law. The sophisticated legal principles developed by the Romans, codified in works like the Justinian Code, provided the basis for many modern civil law systems across Europe and beyond. Concepts of justice, citizenship, and legal procedure. The physical footprint of Rome is also still visible across the landscape of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. The vast network of Roman roads, so crucial for the empire's administration and trade, established the routes for many of Europe's modern highways. The remarkable feats of Roman engineering, the monumental aqueducts that carried water to cities, the sturdy bridges, and the massive public structures like amphitheaters and basilicas not only survived for centuries but also influenced architectural and engineering methods for generations to come. Many of Europe's great cities, including London, Paris, Vienna, began as Roman military camps or provincial towns, their very layouts sometimes still reflecting their ancient origins. Language is another powerful and living testament to Rome's influence. Latin, the language of the empire, evolved into the Romance languages: Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Romanian. Even in languages that are not directly descended from Latin, such as English, a huge percentage of the vocabulary, particularly in science, law, and theology, is derived from Latin roots. Furthermore, the spread of Christianity was profoundly shaped by the Roman Empire. Adopted as the state religion in the 4th century, the faith used the empire's administrative structure and communication networks to spread, and the church would become the single most important institution, preserving classical learning through the Middle Ages. While the empire in the West fell, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would continue for another 1,000 years, preserving and transmitting classical knowledge. The fall of Rome was not a sudden end, but a long, complex process of transition that marked the end of the ancient world and the beginning of the Middle Ages. The legacy of Rome is not found in its ruins, but in the legal codes, languages, infrastructure, and ideas that form an integral part of the foundation of Western civilization today. Rome fell, but in many essential ways, it never truly left us.